That is James Mennie. He is over at the Montreal Gazette. So, Jim, what do you want to get going with? You want to talk about the Liberal polling boost? First of all, to me, you elect a new leader on a Saturday. Now we have a new poll literally 2 days later. It's almost hard for me to believe there's a bump here for Liberals, but go ahead. Where do you fit in on this?
Well, Aaron, it's kind of funny because I share that opinion, although we can easily explain it with what I like to refer to very scientifically as the shiny thing factor, which is the fact that, we haven't been talking about the Liberals. All of a sudden, they've got a new leader. It's Pablo Rodriguez, and he used to be a federal cabinet minister. And you're in the news, and people are noticing. And they apparently, according to this Palace survey that was conducted for L'Actualité and the aggregator site QC125, they have also made increases among Francophone voters, skyrocketing from 10% to 19%, although the PQ still is running the table with 38%. But I think above and beyond everything else, Aaron, I think what this shows us, and I think we should be very, very careful about this, is just how volatile the electorate has become. Remember, you and I and everybody else were stuck in this Groundhog Day where you had the CAQ was dominating the polls. Because why? Because opposition was evenly divided between three opposition parties, right? It was basically a dead heat between the Liberals, the PQ, and Québec Solidaire. And nothing ever seemed to change. And all of a sudden, there was that big gap with the third link, fibbing about the third link in the 2022 election, and things have been going downhill for the CAQ ever since. And the CAQ is in third place, and they actually have lower support among Francophone voters than the Liberals. They're 3 points below the Liberals. But I think all of this shows that it can change. It can change on a dime. God help us. We have 14, 13 months to the next general election. And there's a lot of things that can go horribly, horribly wrong, not just for the Liberals, but also for the PQ, who sooner or later are going to have to ante up when it comes to what kind of a government they're actually going to be, because pledges made in the heat of the nationalistic moment that we will forever and ever and ever, we swear, triple cross our hearts to hold a referendum on sovereignty in a first term. Well, if it looks like you're going to get that first term, you may have to swallow a lot more than just your pride and turn around and find an elegant way to get out of it, because in Quebec in the 21st century, a Quebec that looks at René Lévesque as an historical figure, what you're selling, people ain't buying, so it's not going to work. So it's going to be a very, very interesting year, and once again, I think anyone out there, except perhaps Quebec Solidaire. I got a bad feeling about them. But I think any of the other parties could surprise us. They could have reversals of fortune more than once between now and voting day. But I really think that given what the electorate, given what Quebecers, given what our listeners have had to put up with between tariffs and the economy and you name it, people are ready to shop around. People are going to be asking a very simple question, no matter what the party affiliation is. What can you do for me personally?
To that end, I had Raphael Melançon in here. He wrote a piece in the Gazette today. Had a column on the fact that now that Pablo is the guy, this just basically lets the Parti Québécois go to town, try to bring sovereignty back as a big issue. Here's a former federal minister, bring up all the things that the feds did under Justin Trudeau, where he was a minister, with respect to immigration, et cetera, et cetera. Do you buy that, by the way? Do you think that's the sort of the impetus here for them to say, all right, time to start talking sovereignty and separation again?
I'm not saying they won't do it, but if they do, it won't work. I can absolutely assure you of that. As I just said, this is not the same place that it was. This is not the same place that it was before the pandemic, Aaron.
Yeah.
Fundamental perspectives on life, on work, on family life, on the importance of what you do and who you do it with have changed. And the idea that, and which I think one of the reasons why Québec Solidaire is in such dire straits, is that this idea that people don't want to talk about abstracts or idealism. People want to have actual results. And quite frankly, even I was listening to the show earlier and hearing you give these interviews about this absolutely obscene, scandalous $500 million cut to education. Yeah. Remember, this was the education government, Aaron?
Education and healthcare,
And look at them, and they're double-crossing They're double-crossing the school boards or the service centers, but they're just screwing over the students. All this talk about, let's get rid of your cell phone, and Bernard Drinville sounding like everyone's favorite child counselor, and they're basically turning around saying, give us the money, we don't care. You can take down, you can do your ciphering on a piece of slate with a piece of chalk, you know what I mean? This is where we're going back to in Quebec education. And the fact that there are not people in the streets with torches and pitchforks yet suggests to me that, things are going to get very, very interesting come the fall. You cannot BS your way through anymore. The way the PQ has for decades, saying everything will be fine. Separatism will change everything. Sovereignty, it's a magic wand. Even Lucien Bouchard, at the end, who dismissed it as a magic wand, it's not going to change that. You got to grow up and live in a world dealing with people like Vladimir Putin and, God help us, Donald Trump. And guess what? Talking about how many sovereignists and demographers can dance on the head of a pin ain't going to take you anyplace. So we may see that maturity, if not on the part of political parties, I like to think on the part of the electorate. But once again, we'll see. But I would be really ready for surprises. And honestly, even, I like to think I don't have that many, but I think a lot of my assumptions about Quebec politics, I'm prepared to see those blown off the airlock sooner rather than later.
So, let me ask, and I think Tom Mulcair may have mentioned it this morning. So, if we're going to assume that François Legault is not going to lead the CAQ into the next election, suddenly the name Mario Dumont seems to be coming up. Does that make a difference, just changing the leader, given the fact that the party itself is doing so poorly?
No, I don't think so. And I hate to say it this way. But of course, mind you haven't gone into politics. I think the whole idea, there's an abnormally large number of former media types who get involved in politics in Quebec. I don't think that's necessarily a badge of credibility, a badge of competence. And I think Mario Dumont, who is really good, and you know what, Aaron? I got to tell you, I speak from experience, it's a lot easier to sit behind the table and commentate on politics than get down and dirty. It's a hard job, unforgiving, long hours, and maybe you win, but if you don't, everyone remembers what a loser you were. So I'm not entirely sure you're going to see people lining up to take over from François Legault, especially given the state of the CAQ these days.
But, you're talking about Mario Dumont now because that's what he does. Remember, though, he started the ADQ, so he's got some background as far as politics go.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. But you know what? He got out of Dodge. And listen, don't forget our dear friend Jean Lapierre. He began in media, went to politics, and got the hell back out and went back into media. It's tough. It's not for the faint of heart. And quite frankly, if you spent a lot of your time doing a job that you enjoy, and it's not a lot of agite, it's with a great deal of trepidation that you'd be convinced to go back into politics, especially of leader of the Coalition Avenir Québec.
But by the way, I should mention, you talk about the public, the education cuts, and that's a story that I had earlier in the show. Aaron Durfel is going to have a story apparently on record number of Quebec heart patients are dying while waiting for surgery. So as nice as they try to paint this picture on healthcare and Santé Quebec, honestly, it does not seem like we're getting any further ahead than where we were.
But get your priorities straight. Hobby shops in this province will no longer have English-only paint cans. Yeah. Okay, so let's get real here.
Jim, I got to wrap up. I want to get you a real quick take here. Donald Trump leaving the G7 earlier than most people thought, I guess, to deal with the situation in the Middle East, which he's now claiming victory over. He's calling for an unconditional surrender. What do you make of all that?
He's pretending he's flying bombers over Tehran. It's got nothing to do with this. This is a malignant narcissist coming out. But it's kind of funny because one of the buzz yesterday as well, when he left abruptly, was, it's Tehran, the Middle East. It's been going on. The President of the United States is the best wired person on earth. He can do his job anywhere, okay? But the buzz was that Donald Trump's bowels had turned even to more water at the prospect of having to meet Vladimir Zelensky again after he had said, you don't have the cards, and then Zelensky turned around and blew up half the Russian Air Force. So that was another reason why he got out of Dodge very quickly.
All right. James Mennie at the Montreal Gazette. Thank you, Jim.
Demain.